Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Islamic Economic Series. So think about an economic superpower, just humming with hundreds of specialized trades, everything from architects to astronomers. Now, what if I told you that this whole incredible system thrived for centuries without the one thing we always thought was essential for this kind of thing? Guilds. Well, that's the puzzle we're tackling today. We're going to uncover the sophisticated, guildless universe of the medieval Islamic world and figure out exactly how it built its immense human capital. So how are we going to piece this all together? First up, we'll get a sense of the sheer scale of this economic boom. Then we have to tackle the big one, the myth of Islamic guilds that, well, never really existed. From there, we'll dive into the three real pillars that held everything up: a system of law-guided apprenticeships, the absolute game changer that was professional manuals, and the constant free flow of skilled workers. And finally, we'll see how all these pieces fit together to create a totally unique and powerful path to prosperity. Okay, first things first, let's just set the scene. We're talking about the 8th to the 11th centuries. And the Islamic world wasn't just, growing, it was absolutely exploding with economic energy. Historians have a name for this. They call it an economic efflorescence. It's basically a fancy way of saying it was a sustained boom period where society gets way more complex, jobs get super specialized, and the whole economy just transforms. And here's a number that just makes you stop and think. 522. That's how many distinct, specialized jobs there were in the service sector alone by the 11th century. And that's not even counting the 418 in manufacturing. You have to realize, this wasn't just a society of farmers and soldiers. We're talking professional bookbinders, water engineers, pharmacists, astronomers. No other economy at the time, not in Europe, not anywhere, came even close to this level of complexity. Which brings up a huge question: who was training all these people? Right, that incredible specialization leads to the central mystery here. How did they organize it all? For decades, historians just looked at the European model and assumed the answer had to be guilds. I mean, it seemed like the only logical way, right? How else are you going to regulate quality and train thousands of artisans across hundreds of different trades? But here's the thing. When modern researchers actually went looking for the evidence, for guild charters, for membership rolls, for anything, they found nothing, a complete blank. After years and years of searching, the conclusion was unavoidable. As the great historian S.D. Goitin put it, the guilds everyone was looking for simply had not yet come into being. They didn't exist back then. Okay, so if the central pillar of the entire European system was just missing, what on earth was holding up this incredible economic structure? If it wasn't guilds, then what was it? Well, the answer wasn't some single institution. It was a really powerful, dynamic system that was built on three core pillars. First, a flexible apprenticeship system that was built on the foundation of Islamic law. Second, a revolution in knowledge sharing through professional manuals. And third, the constant, free movement of talent all across the map. So let's break down that first pillar, apprenticeship. Now, on the surface, it probably looked pretty familiar. Skills being passed from father to son, or in workshops with a clear hierarchy: masters, workers, apprentices. But the real genius was in how it was all managed. And this is where the two worlds really split. While European apprentices were being tied up in rigid, written guild contracts, Islamic apprenticeships were governed by existing Islamic law. Specifically, the principles of hire, or ijara, which are basically the rules for employment contracts. What this meant was that most agreements could just be oral. There were no guild fees to pay, no complex legal documents to draft. It was this flexible, low-cost, and incredibly efficient system for passing on skills. Now for our second pillar, and this one is a true technological and cultural revolution: the widespread use of the written word to lock down and share professional knowledge. For most of human history, knowledge was a fleeting thing. It lived and died in someone's memory. But then, in the 8th century, a technology showed up from China that changed absolutely everything: cheap paper. And suddenly, knowledge could be captured, copied, and shared on a scale that was just unprecedented. This sparked a literacy revolution and an explosion of books, libraries, and something else that was totally new. This led to the creation of professional manuals for nearly every trade you can imagine. And I'm talking detailed, technical guides on everything from building siege engines to minting coins, from pharmacology to navigating the Indian Ocean. What's so crucial here is that this knowledge wasn't locked away. As incomes rose, even ordinary artisans could afford an education and their own copies of these books. It was a true democratization of expertise. And that brings us to our third and final pillar, mobility. With no guilds to put up walls and control who could work where, artisans were free. They could just pack up their tools and follow the opportunity, taking their skills to wherever they were needed most. And the scale of this movement was just massive. When the city of Baghdad was founded, it's estimated that 100,000 skilled workers were brought in to build it. 100,000! Let that sink in for a second. These huge construction projects acted like magnets, just pulling in talent from every corner of the map and turning new cities into these incredible melting pots of innovation. This mobility was the engine of technology transfer. It's literally how papermaking traveled from Central Asia all the way to Spain. It's how the intricate art of rock crystal carving, which was perfected in Iraq and Iran, found a new home in Egypt. Every single artisan who moved was a carrier of ideas, spreading innovation and best practices across the entire civilization. So, when you bring these three pillars together, the legal framework, the written knowledge, and the mobility, you start to see a really coherent and powerful system for building up human capital, one that was fundamentally different from the European model. So, in the end, the absence of guilds wasn't a flaw in the system. It was actually what made the whole system possible. In their place, you had something much more fluid and dynamic. A low-cost legal framework for training, an open-source library of professional knowledge, thanks to paper, and a totally borderless market for talent. It was a model built not on restriction, but on access and mobility. And that brings us to a final, bigger question. The success of this guildless universe really proves that there's never been just one single path to prosperity. It forces us to look beyond the familiar European story and start asking, what other powerful models for building human capital has history hidden from us? See you in the next one. Subscribe, like, and comment.